Thank you for listening to this Podcast One production, available on Apple Podcasts and Podcast One.
Hello and welcome into another edition of Beyond the Darkness. This is the Sunday edition. I'm Tim Dennis in for Dave Schrader. Folks, this is kind of a tricky edition. We're doing an encore presentation today, and I'll tell you why. There's actually a very good excuse for today's edition being an encore presentation. First of all, my apologies, and this is a personal apology for today's episode. It's kind of a long and entangled story, and as our faithful listeners, I will give you the long story behind this. As you know, this weekend is Chicago Ghost Con. And we intended today's episode to be an episode from Chicago Ghost Con. We were going to pull some of the fine speakers here at Chicago Ghost Con aside, and we were going to give you a live episode from Chicago Ghost Con. To say that Dave and I have been snake bit this week is putting it lightly. Here's all the things that have happened from Chicago Ghost Con this week and even before. I'll start with my side first, because my side's, to say it's entertaining, to say the least, is being cordial. Mine started with vehicle issues with my van. I know a van sounds creepy. No, it has windows and it doesn't say free candy on the side or free puppies. But I went to, my brakes were a little spongy, so I took my van in, to, I'll just say to a shop, I won't name it. And I said, my brakes are a little spongy. I'm wondering if you'll check the brakes and rotors on it. Because I think it's probably about time. The brake pedal goes all the way to the floor, and sometimes I don't even stop. So they checked the brake pads and rotors and said, you know what, you're 50% on the front, 70% on the back. Your brake pads and rotors look okay. The one rotor needed to be changed on the rear, and it was a little sticky on the rear, but I know that sounds bad. That's kind of a double entendre. But you know what? Otherwise, you seem to be fine. And I said, well, it was spongy. It went all the way to the floor. What's going on? They said, we're going to check your master cylinder. So they checked the master cylinder, and lo and behold, when they checked the master cylinder, there is a ton of oil in my master cylinder. Now, if you know anything about brake systems at all, you don't put oil in your master cylinder. You put brake fluid in there. Yeah, that real bad for the car. Real bad for the car. So that meant that I had to replace the master cylinder. I know this isn't car talk, but I had to replace the master cylinder, the brake lines, and the calipers. Very expensive repair. But they managed to save the rubber hoses on the back of the van. So what should have been a $1,400 repair, they saved me a little bit of money, and it was $1,100. So I get the call, and I brought it in like on a Tuesday. They managed to get it done early for me, and I was going to take off for Chicago Ghost Con on Thursday. Okay. They got it done for me on a Wednesday. They said, we got your van done early. They were thinking they probably couldn't get it done till Thursday at the earliest, Thursday night. They got it done for me early on Wednesday. They gave me a call and they said, Tim, question for you. I said, sure. And they said, when you came in, we got this done for you and everything, but we can't get the ABS and the brake light off on the van. And I said, well, if that's the worst thing you can't, do, so what, that's fine. And they said, here's the other thing. Did your radio work when you brought it in? And I said, you're damn right that radio worked when I brought it in. that radio is less than a year old. It's a Pioneer aftermarket radio that's got a touchscreen and Apple CarPlay, and I got it at Best Buy. It was a Black Friday deal, and I had some gift certificates, and I ended up getting this really expensive radio for about $200. I mean, it was just a kind of a cheapy deal, and I was quite proud of that fact that I got that for that, because as you know, around the country they're outlawing texting and all that stuff, and you kind of can't hold your phone and text anymore. And this thing actually gave me my messages, and it has Sirius XM radio capability, and I got a hookup on that, and I was working the radio connections, and I got everything worked out with that. So I was pretty proud of myself. And I said, "You killed my radio?" "Well, no, we didn't kill your radio. It won't power up. We'll figure it out." Well, after 2.5 hours of screwing around with my radio, they finally got it going. All right, great. So I came to pick it up, and of course I'm 2.5 hours late for taking off. And I go to open up my doors to take off from the shop, and I take my key fob and I go doot doot, and the locks won't work. So I walk right back into the store and I yell at the mechanic, "Hey, Paul, my locks don't work." And he goes, "What?" And I go, "Yeah, I hit the key fob," and I said, "It makes the noise, but the locks don't work." So he goes, "Let me take it back in the shop. I'll do a PowerPoint inspection." So he does the PowerPoint inspection. I don't know what brakes have to do with my electrical system at all, but he somehow caused a power surge and blew a bunch of fuses. So he replaced a bunch of fuses, and now I'm officially 4 hours late to leave for Chicago, which means I'm going to be really late getting into Chicago. No matter. I leave around 5 o'clock at night, which, as you know, if you've driven from Minneapolis to Chicago, means that you are going to officially get there sometime around 11, 11:30, maybe 12 o'clock. Not a big deal. Still not a big deal. I'm a night owl anyways. So I hop in my trusty van, 2005 Grand Caravan. Of course, it's not the newest or nicest vehicle out there, but it's mine, and it's paid for, right? So I hop on the old highway, and off I go. I've got my trusty radio, and I'm listening to, Sirius XM. It's not an endorsement. I'm just saying I'm listening to it. And so I'm, bopping along and singing a song and doing what it is I do. And, by the way, I finally got a McRib. Would you like to hear the story? It's kind of gross. I stop in Madison. I get my McRib, right? And I'm so happy because I got my McRib. And I got 3 McRibs, much like Dave suggested. You get the 3 McRibs because, you got to have your one, and then you've got your couple for later. So I figured I'm going to have my one now. I went through the drive-thru, of course, because I'm going behind. I'm running behind. So I get my one McRib I'm going to have now. I'm going to have one when I get to the hotel, and I'm going to save one for breakfast. I know, gross. A warmed-up McRib, right? So I've got my McRib, and I figure this is it. I've been waiting so long for this McRib. I take my bite of the McRib, okay? First bite. Little tiny bite, not big bite. Little tiny bite. I take this bite of the McRib. Now I have a small hiatal hernia, just a very small one. It's never triggered me before. I've never got anything stuck in my esophagus or in my windpipe or in my stomach, ever, with this hiatal hernia. Well, congratulations, Tim Dennis. Now is the first time you ever get anything stuck in your pipe. And it's with the delicious McRib for your very first time. And I'm 3 hours away from home and never had to deal with this before. So here I am, and by the way, I've got a huge cramp in my leg from driving too. So I'm looking for some TheraWorks. By the way, TheraWorks, again, if you think that we just advertise whatever on this show, we don't. We advertise things that we truly endorse. I've been using TheraWorks ever since they advertised here on the show. So I went over to Hy-Vee. I was driving over to Hy-Vee to see if they had some TheraWorks. They didn't stock it, unfortunately, so I was trying to drive to Walgreens to get some TheraWorks, and this was as I'm choking on this McRib, and I'm trying to work it up out of the hiatal hernia. So I get out at high V, and I'm still kind of trying to work the McRib out of my hiatal hernia, and I look like a dog about to retch. And I run into high V. I'm looking for TheraWorks. I'm not finding it. No TheraWorks, no TheraWorks, no TheraWorks. Not finding it at all. And finally, as I walk out of high V, I'm like, oh, I think I'm getting it out. I think I'm getting it out. And I must have looked like a drunken bum on a Friday or Thursday night. I just go over to a bush over by the pharmacy, and I expel my McRib right there in the bushes. I'm such a bum. Yeah. So I got rid of the McRib. Now here's the sick part, folks. At that point, I jump back in the van. I go, okay, I got to go over to Walgreens because I didn't find the TheraWorks at Hy-Vee. I take one look at the McRib. Now, most people would be sickened to look at that McRib sandwich. Not your boy. I looked at the McRib and went, maybe I'll take another bite when I get to the hotel, which is 2 hours away. I'm like, I can get used to it. I could eat it again when I get to the hotel. That's how much of a pig I am. Okay, so we're off and running. I go to Walgreens, I get the TheraWorks, and I'm back off and I'm running. I get to Rockford, I get gas. Everything's still good. I take off from Rockford and I'm on my way. And I'm looking at my mileage, my GPS on the screen on my radio. And I see that I'm about an hour at this point as I get to Elgin. I see that I'm a little over an hour away from Chicago at this point, at time of night. And I'm thinking, just a little over an hour. I'm really fatigued. I've had about enough. I've had a rough ride. I'm just ready to get to the hotel, get checked in, say hey to a few people, a few friends I've missed, a few of the speakers that I haven't seen in a while, and just get checked in, go to bed. Maybe take a few more bites of that McRib that caused me trouble. And go to bed. So as I'm driving, I hear a "Shoo." And I went, no. And then I smelled burning rubber. I look up in my rearview mirror, and there it is. My left driver's side rear tire shredding. I pull over. I'm in the left lane. I pull over to the left-hand side median. And I swear a lot. Now, realize with the Charcot foot and the Crow Walker boot that I have on, I can't change a tire anymore. I'm not physically able to change a tire anymore. And the spare tire on the van is underneath the van. It's underneath the van, and it's fastened by a nut between the driver's seat and the passenger seat. And I don't have the T-winch. When I bought this van from a friend of mine, archaeologist friend of mine, it wasn't on the jack. I got the jack out of the back. The hub cover, or the hub cover for the back wheel has the in the back of the van has the T-winch. So I don't know where it is. It's not attached to the jack. So I don't have that. So I call my insurance company, Progressive, and I tell them I can't physically change the tire. I have, full coverage. So I ask them, can you send out someone to help me change the tire? And I said, and they said, well, we'll send out a tow driver just in case they can't change the tire because you don't have all the tools. And in that, if they can't change the tire, then they can tow you to somewhere where they can just get you new tires, and you can stay in Elgin for the night. I said, but I have a reservation already in Chicago at the venue. I don't need to stay in Elgin. I don't want to stay in Elgin. They said, oh, no. You can just stay in Elgin. I said, I don't want to stay in Elgin. I have a reservation. I want to stay in Chicago. Well, I'm sure he'll just change the tire. You'll be on your way. You'll have your spare. You'll be able to go to Chicago. Well, the young kid from the tow company shows up, And he's texting his girlfriend the entire time. And I'm sure they're having a great conversation. And it's, I love you. I'll do nice and naughty things to you. I'll do nice and naughty things to you. I'm sure they're having a great time. Kid shows up, takes one look at me, takes one look at the boot, says what happened. I said, oh, it was a great and gory time. I'm sure you don't want to hear anything about it, but it's extremely French, extremely rare, yada, yada, yada. And he looks at me, he looks at the van and goes, yeah, I don't have the tools to change your tire. He didn't even check. Just said, I don't have the tools to change your tire. Yeah, I'll just tow you over to Discount Tire. Huh? Oh, okay. So he tows me over to Discount Tire, and here I sit in the parking lot. So I'm like, oh boy, what do I do now? So I ask Siri for hotels in the area. And she gives me Quality Inn is the closest one. So I call Quality Inn, and I get an awesome guy by the name of Henry. And I got to say what's up to Henry, because we had an amazing conversation after I got to Quality Inn. I call Henry, and I ask him what the rate is for a room for the night. Henry tells me. And he says, but if you get over here, I'll give you 10% off if you get over here in the next hour. I said, I'm calling a car right now, and I'll be over there in no time flat, 20 minutes. He said, I'll see you then. So Henry and I actually he was talking about how this hotel, this Quality Inn, is haunted. And how, as he's at the front desk, he sees shadows all the time. But Henry's a very spiritual person. And he understands that he kind of coexists at the desk with these spirits. And he's very steeped in his faith. So he understands where these spirits come from. And he's just kind of, he doesn't, they don't rock him. They don't shake him, Like I said, Henry's a rock. He's very, very strong in his faith. So he's just kind of like, what's up? As they walk by. And I see a lot of investigators. I see a lot of people who investigate the paranormal who jump at the slightest thing. Not Henry. Henry's a night auditor there at the Quality Inn in Elgin, and he's all right with it. He just, hey, knowing that nothing's going to get to him. And that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. I just thought it was cool. So I had to say what's up to Henry. So I get my key. I talk to Henry for about an hour. I go upstairs. I get about 3.5 hours of sleep, because at this point it's 3 in the morning. Well, it's about 3:30 in the morning, and I got to be up to get over to Discount Tire by 8. I get up. I call Discount Tire as they open. I said, do you have any openings? Discount Tire says, no, but you know what? We saw your van here. We got your phone message when you got in last night. And we think it's really cool that you're going to this convention this weekend to speak. We'll do anything we can to get you out there and get you to the convention as soon as possible, because we realize you've had a rough night. I thought these guys at Discount Tire are the best. Cool. So I get over there. They get me taken care of. And in fact, they said, we'll get you out of here before noon. They did. They got my two new tires on the back of my van for about $200, which was nice. They got me on the road by 11:45. Here's where everything went wrong. After shredding a tire on the highway, unable to change it, a tow truck driver that didn't want to help me, a night out on the highway of just fighting. I'm looking at 4 lanes of the worst local traffic I've ever seen in my life. Constant traffic, back and forth. Two lanes to my left, 2 lanes to my right. And cars are being very, very gingerly, they're pulling out, I had 2 cars in front of me. The guy, 2 cars in front of me, is going to take his left, and he waits for traffic to clear from his right side and from the left side, and he zips out there real quick and makes it. Like a game of Frogger, right? The guy who's directly in front of me is looking at the traffic from the right that's just not... He's in front of me for about 7 minutes. The traffic from the right isn't giving up. It isn't yielding. They're just coming nonstop. The traffic from the left finally lets up, and so he waits for the traffic that's trying to take a right, that's right to the right of us to let up, and he crosses that lane and decides to take a right all the way from the left lane and says, screw it, I'm going to go up to the nearest semaphore, which is 2 blocks away, and I'm going to make a U-turn because it's that bad. Then comes your boy. I pull up, and it's my turn to take a left. And I waited there a good 3-4 minutes. Okay? Keep this in mind. I was in no hurry. I had spent a lot of money on that van. Money I didn't have. And I'm heading to a job that I have to be at. And I'm sitting there, and I'm very patient. And I'm shook, and I'm tired. But I'm awake. Keep that in mind as well. I'm fully alert. I've caffeined up. I'm ready to go. I got an hour left to get to the hotel. I'm excited to be doing Chicago Ghost Con. I've talked to Ursula. Everything's good. I got the radio on. I've got the 70s on 7 channel on. I'm grooving away to old tunes. I'm like, all right, here we go. So in my field of vision, the traffic on the right has let up. There's no traffic coming from my right. On my left, I've got 3 cars coming, but they're all turning right into my road that I'm sitting on, that I'm about to turn off of. So 3 cars coming, but they're all turning right. I pull out at a medium pace. I'm not speeding. I'm pulling out at a decent pace. And as I'm pulling out, all of a sudden I see a flash of gray, and wham, I get T-boned. And I'm like, what the F? I got hit so hard, ladies and gentlemen, that I went across 3 lanes of traffic and almost ended up on the sidewalk. Now, I had 2 very nice ladies walk up to me. I remember this much. 2 African-American ladies walked up to me. The first one walks up to me and says, "Sir, are you okay?" And all I can muster out of my mouth is, "I don't know." I learned from a long time ago, and when I was in college, I got hit from behind, and I said I was okay. And I ended up having an injury that I didn't know about, and it was years ago. Again, years ago, and my back and neck ended up hurting for weeks afterwards, and found out that I had actually fractured something. So I learned. And again, this is good advice. If you're ever in an auto accident, don't ever say you're okay right away, because you never know. Go get checked. So I'm sitting there and I'm feeling pain. I'm feeling pain in my knee, feeling pain in my hip, feeling pain in actually I felt my arm go listless, and pain in my shoulder, pain in my neck, shoulder, my hip. And the pain in my hip is radiating into my low back. And I said, I don't know. She said, okay, well, I called the police. Someone's on their way. I said, okay. Second lady comes up and says, "Sir, are you okay?" I said, "To be honest with you, ma'am, I don't know." She goes, okay, well, I called the police again. And she said, I'm recording. I recorded everything. And she said, I called and asked for an ambulance and a fire truck. You're in there good. I went, I'm in here good. I tried to turn my neck to the left to see how I was in there good. I couldn't. I couldn't get my neck all the way to the left. I thought, all right, I'm in here good. So I waited. I just took deep breaths, and I just stayed calm. Because I've learned in life, if you stay in there and you just remain calm and you think to yourself, I need to focus on the next thing I do. What's the next thing I'm going to do? That you can get through any situation. What's the next step? What's the next step? Everything was to my right. My phone was in my right pocket. My wallet was in my right. And when I say my right pocket, I was wearing cargo shorts, so it was in my right pocket. to my right. My wallet was in my right pocket, luckily. Nothing was in my left. Nothing but my change for the toll was in my left pocket. So nothing that I needed, no information that I needed was in my left. And then before I knew it, the medic was on my right side. And he approached me on the right, and he asked me for my information. I was giving him my information. He asked me, do you have your ID? And I managed to just hand him my wallet. He had my wallet, so he had everything. He had my medical card. He had my ID. He had everything but my insurance card, which I pulled up on an app on my phone, my Progressive app. I gave that to him. And he was going through, what happened and whatnot. And before I knew it, I had seen the fire truck pull up, but I wasn't putting two and two together. And two firemen walk up to the left, and they said, Tim, we're going to have to extract you from the vehicle. He said, no, you normally have heard it as the jaws of life or whatever, but I forget what they called the machine that they extract you with or whatever. And he said, you're going to hear some loud noises. I said, okay. Loud noises don't scare me. I'm half deaf from wearing headphones anyways. And he said, you're going to hear some loud noises, and, it may seem a little scary or whatnot, but we got to get you out of here. And the medics crawl in my van, and they said, we're going to put a cervical collar on you because you do have some neck pain and some shoulder pain. And we may have to cut your hoodie. I was wearing a Minnesota Twins hoodie. I said, oh, don't cut my hoodie. I love this hoodie. And he said, oh, I think we can get it. One of the medics said, I think we can get it around the hoodie. And he did. He didn't cut my hoodie, thank God. I know, I'm so vain, aren't I? And so he doesn't cut the hoodie, and which is good. So at that point, they say they're going to pull the door, and the one fireman looks at the other fireman and says, oh boy, I'm going to need your help on this one. And I'm like, you need your help on this one? I thought this is going to be interesting. And they both grab a hold of this device. And I think for the first time ever, I heard a fireman yell, Emmer effer. And they both pulled, and I saw my door fly almost 8 feet and hit the fire truck in front of me. Almost hit the fire truck. It fell right in front of it. And I thought, that was impressive. And I kind of giggled, and I said, are you boys available for the softball season? To which they both laughed. And at that point, they kind of laid me sideways, put me on the backboard, extracted me from the van. And they put me in the ambulance, and I was on my way to the hospital. And that was my Thursday. Oh, I'm sorry, my Friday. And after that, arrangements were made to get me to Chicago Ghost Con, because when I got cleared from the hospital, when they took x-rays of the neck and the back, and nothing was broken. And at that point, I was told when I was young and I first got into radio, if you're not dead or in jail, you go to work. To which somehow that surprised everybody around here. That if you're not dead or in jail, you go to work. Sure, I hurt like the dickens. I've never been in pain like that before. I mean, even through all the herniations and the Charcot foot, and I've been in extreme excruciating pain. Sure, but yeah, you go to work. I mean, everybody does it. You do it. You're listening to this podcast. You've been through hell, and you've gotten up and you've gone to work, and you don't get accolades for it. Nobody gets accolades for it. You go and you do your job, and that's life. That's life in America. You get up and you do your job, and nobody pats you on the back, and nobody says, way to go, Tiger. Nobody says, that's good. I just happen to do a job where they say, oh my God, that's so remarkable. And, you know what? If I were working at a factory, if I were working breaking rocks, they wouldn't say that's admirable. And they'd just say, you know what? You're expected to do it. And let's face it, I gave my word. I gave my commitment that I'd be at a Chicago Ghost Con, and I love Ursula to death, and I love seeing you guys, and that gives me a charge. That gives me such energy, and I absolutely was looking forward to this convention and absolutely wanted to be here. I didn't want to be anywhere else. So, yeah, of course I was going to get up and get here and do the convention. I mean, I had 3 matches I was going to ring announce, and I was going to do my conspiracy theory talk, and I was going to meet everybody here and have a good time. Why wouldn't I want to be here? What's so surprising about that? I don't see anything surprising about that. So I made it here to Chicago Ghost Con, and I shocked a few people. I don't know why, but I did. So after I got done doing my talk, and I had a third. We scattered the matches at Chicago Ghost Con. So there was a wrestling match in the morning. There was one in the afternoon, which was right before my talk on conspiracy theories. And these matches generally ran around 15 minutes apiece. And then I did my talk. So I had a match before my talk. I did my talk. And then Aaron Segers and the Paranormal Paparazzi crew did their talk. And then Dave did his talk on the Holzer Files, kind of a behind the scenes of the Holzer Files type talk. Well, when Dave did his talk, I came upstairs to my room to get the music together, because we were going to do musical intros for both Man Beast and Ian Xavier. So I was downloading, or trying to download, the internet here at the hotel is a little slow. I was trying to download the music for both of them, and I got a text from Ian Xavier saying, "You need to get down here quick." And I'm like, "What's wrong?" And he said, Dave was standing up doing his talk and all of a sudden got really sick. He poked his head into the locker room, which was a room off the side of where Dave was speaking, to stage right. And he said he just poked his head in, not realizing I wasn't back there, backstage, and said, "Timmy, you got to just bring on the wrestling. I don't feel well," and walked off. Now, what I was told was that from a friend of ours who was sitting watching Dave's talk, Dave was just talking, and all of a sudden he grabbed his head and wiped his head, and he had a handful of sweat, and said, "I don't feel so good. I feel like I'm going to pass out." And he said, "That's it. The talk's over," or something to that effect. And then he kind of walked out. Now, you got to realize, folks, Dave suffers from extreme migraines. And also, if you remember, when we were doing the show, which would have been yesterday's show, he had said that he had caught some really, really strange bug from his kids. So he was suffering with a bunch of different things as he came down here to Chicago. So something had gone wrong. Now today he's back at it, and he's back downstairs, and he's hosting he's doing hosting duties for the convention today. So last night, basically after his talk, he had gone upstairs, gone to bed. There was a kind of like an after celebration after the talks were over, where everybody had gone over to Chet's Melody Lounge. And there was free food for everybody, cash bar, which I had gone to that, but he went straight to bed, and basically tried to sleep it off. So that's what he had done. And I know this is getting a little wordy and a little lengthy, but I'm kind of updating you guys on what went on. So Dave is trying to fight off that today. So that's kind of what's going on with this podcast today. So what we're doing today is we're going to do a best of today. And I wanted to fill everybody in to let everybody know what's going on, both the people who were in Chicago here and our listeners that are going on. So we're alive and well. I didn't die in a fiery wreck. Dave didn't collapse from some strange Ebola virus. And we're both all right. We're both okay. So we're going to do an encore presentation here. We'll give you a best of Beyond the Darkness Radio. And just sit back, relax, enjoy your Sunday here. And hopefully our picks are a lot better than our weekend was for the You Pick 'em Charity Challenge here on Podcast One. And we'll just kind of sit back, relax, and enjoy an encore presentation of Darkness Radio. Here you go. Here's your encore presentation now.
Good evening. Welcome back to the show. The best in paranormal talk radio begins its second hour on the air this evening. We'll be joined in a few moments by Jeff Daugherty. He's the author of Confessions of an Exorcist. Before we do that, though, Tim, there's a news story that came out today. I don't know if you heard about this, but I wanted to chat with you a little bit about it before we talk to our guest and maybe even have him weigh in on this. This is brand new today. Headline from the Mirror saying nearly 100 school children possessed by the devil have contagious visions of man in black trying to kill them. The mass case of demonic possession has caused some pupils to suffer seizures while others have fainted at the school. Almost 100 school children are thought to have been possessed by the devil and see visions of a man in black trying to kill them in what has been described as a mass case of demonic possession. The pupils in Peru are experiencing seizures alongside their horrifying hallucinations. Experts have struggled to explain the strange goings-on, which also include widespread convulsions and fainting at the school, reportedly built on a mafia graveyard. According to local reports, as many as 80 students at the Elsa Pera Flores School in northern Peru's Tarapato have been experiencing the supposedly contagious condition since last month. Children aged between 11 and 14 are reportedly fainting and having strong muscular convulsions. Shocking video footage shows pupils who are barely conscious repeatedly screaming and who appear to be delirious. Dr. Anthony Choi told national channel Pan America TV, "We don't understand how this has kept going on. We know it started on the 29th of April, and now it's still continuing. Now there are almost 80 pupils still affected." Elsa Di Pizango, a concerned mother whose daughter was experiencing some of the symptoms, said she fainted in school. They didn't say anything at the hospital. She just fainted. She keeps on spitting froth from her mouth. A pupil that's not been named in the media described their experience. "It's disturbing for me to think about. It's as if someone kept on chasing me from behind. It was a tall man, all dressed in black, with a big beard, and it felt like he was trying to strangle me. My friends say I was screaming desperately, but I don't remember much." Another schoolgirl said she had trouble breathing and was desperately holding her neck as if someone was strangling her. According to her friends, she kept screaming, "Take it out!" Another anonymous girl, aged 13, told local media several children from different classrooms fainted at the same time. "I got nauseous and started vomiting. I heard voices, and a man in black chased me and wanted to touch me." Franklin Steiner, a parapsychologist who investigates paranormal and psychic phenomena, said, "It's known that years ago there were many victims of terrorism here. When the school was built, some say bones and dead bodies were unearthed. Locals believe that this is a case of demonic interference, saying some children must have played games that invoked demons, such as using a Ouija board. Now, a Ouija board, again, marked with letters and numbers and used to communicate with souls of the dead, many religious organizations have warned against using the board, saying that they can lead to demonic possession. As of yet, there have been no rational or official explanation for the strange phenomena. But an entire school of students being affected by this, Tim, in a way that almost sounds like, you know, if there's these hallucinatory principles of it, convulsions, vomiting, sickness, makes you wonder, is there some kind of natural gas leak there? Is there something under the building besides the supernatural that would be causing this type of activity?
Very well could be.
Let's check in quickly with our guest about this, and then we'll talk about his book, Confessions of an Exorcist. Jeffrey Daugherty is here with us this evening. Good evening, Jeff. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure, gentlemen. Glad to be with you. I really appreciate the invitation.
So were you able to hear the story that I just read off the news?
I was able to hear that story, and the thing that is equally interesting is the occasion there in Peru, and I thought the same thing that you stated, you know, natural gas leak, some type of a natural reason for the occurrence. But I also remember about 2-3 weeks ago, I handled this on my show, a very similar type of a situation in a school with mass, what was being called demonic instances of possession. But this was in a Muslim country, and it was almost a mirror image of what you were talking about. So you've got it in Peru, heavily Catholic territory, and you've got a mirror image of the same type of thing happening in a heavily Muslim country. So either there's a lot of gas leaks or there's some really interesting things going on in the spiritual/paranormal realm.
Well, what's fascinating to me, I can understand the convulsions, the nausea, the hallucinations, passing out. That could be a natural environmental issue. And obviously you would think that they would have tested for that at this point. But the fact that they're all seeing this man in black chasing them, that's where it starts to straddle the boundary from weird possible scientific explanation to seeming to be that there may be an underlying supernatural element to this.
Absolutely. And the folks in the Muslim country were also getting the sensation of being held down by a figure. I can't recall off the top of my head, obviously not being prepared for this particular news story. I don't know if they mentioned a black person, a black man, a black shadow type man. But every time that I go on coast, George is always asking me, Jeffrey, why do you think we have such an increase in exorcism type activity? And the man's has his finger on the pulse of what's happening, and we're seeing it spread throughout the world. And it's interesting to me, heavily Catholic country, heavily Islamic country. I'm waiting for the same thing to happen in a heavily Jewish area, to be frank with you.
Oh, really? You think then there might be something to tie it together since it's different religions and theologies that are being attacked?
Well, if since you asked me, I'll editorialize, and my opinion is my opinion is free, and it's worth everything that you pay for it. I can promise you that. But the thing that people don't realize, and the thing that I present often, and people don't particularly enjoy me presenting it, is when you look at Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, if you do any study at all, you're looking at religions that have basically all three have the same players, and if you really get into the study of the words and the history and the documentation, the Lord of Judaism, Yahweh of Judaism, the Lord of Christianity, and Allah of Islam, many people believe it's all the same individual. It's all the same deity. It's all the same dude. I don't mean to be be silly, but it is all the same person. And my question is this, and again, chatting with George a little bit about this, you've got all of these major religions which are showing a declination and a loss in attendance, and people are fleeing the traditional churches en masse. What better way to get people running back to the churches than to stimulate, orchestrate, or at least help facilitate a rash of supernatural, demonic type activity that everyone automatically thinks, oh no, I have to run back to the imam, I have to run back to the pastor, I have to run back to the priest, I have to run back to the rabbi to take care of these demons. They're everywhere. Just a thought. So
you're thinking maybe it's just a PR stunt.
Well, I'm thinking that it's being orchestrated. I would probably lean to the idea that it's being orchestrated on a spiritual level by a common entity that is common to all three of those religions.
Let's we have to take a quick break. When we come back, though, Jeff, I'd like to know two different schools. Let's accept the fact that maybe there is something dark and malevolent taking place. Maybe there is some kind of possession. How can that happen if we truly have free will? If we are protected under the word of our religions, how are children being affected and impacted by demonic possession and in such a massive way? We'll talk with our guest more about that and about his book, Confessions of an Exorcist, when we return to Darkness Radio.
Pluto TV is the leading free streaming television service. You can watch over 100 television channels and thousands of movies on demand, all completely free, and Pluto TV will never ask you for a credit card, and you don't even need to sign up to watch for free. Pluto TV is the easy and completely legal way to watch your favorite TV shows and hit movies for free. What are you waiting for? You never have to pay for TV again. You simply download Pluto TV. You can download Pluto TV for free on all your favorite devices today, including your phone, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV. That's how I have Pluto TV on all my televisions, smart TVs, PlayStation, and anywhere else you stream. Pluto TV is the leading free streaming television service. Watch over 100 television channels and thousands of movies on demand, and all for free. No credit cards needed, no sign up. Pluto TV is the easy and completely legal way to watch your favorite TV shows and hit movies. What are you waiting for? Never pay for TV again. Download Pluto TV for free on all your favorite devices today.
We're talking with our guest, Jeffrey Daugherty, his book, Confessions of an Exorcist. Jeffrey, is it possible for a demonic wave to just take people over without them inviting this in?
You know, that's a great question. And just to frame a little bit of reference to frame my answers and viewpoints, 20 years I spent as a licensed minister with three of the largest Protestant denominations in the world. I'm a Bible college graduate, and I left that because I came convinced within my own mind that there were cracks, as I call them, in the foundation of big-time religion. And it's not just religion, but any type of organization that is populated by human beings. There's going to be some issues there. But I have tried to come since then, looking at the Bible, and the New Testament in particular, from a dispassionate, rational view based upon direct literal rendering of the ancient texts into direct English. So I'm trying to get outside of the realm and the viewpoint of religion and try to bring it to a little bit more dispassionate, actual looking at what the text of the original writer said. And that being said, when you're talking especially about children, you think about the nature of religion, whether it be in Peru with the Catholic kids by and large, or over in the Muslim country, of course, with the Muslim kids. Think about kids, from the time that they're, literally from the time they're born, you're bringing them to church, and they're in church. And when you're a kid, you believe your dad is a king and your mom is a queen, and everything they tell you, you believe is true without any iota of doubt or questioning. And kids are the most thoroughly indoctrinated, if I can use that word, really, of anybody in our culture. And when kids are that indoctrinated in a religious way of thinking, I don't think it's that difficult to cause those kids to be involved in a situation where they would their default understanding and their default rationality of it would be, oh, it's the devil, it's demons, especially if they're led and guided down that path by adults that they look to as experts.
You've given a little background on yourself and kind of removing yourself from the religious aspect, or not even the religious, what's the organized religious aspect of this?
Right, the ecclesiastical aspect.
Right, and taking a more hard-edged approach. When you were doing this as an exorcist, and 30 years in this, do you find that most of the time the people that you were encountering, were they truly possessed by a demon, or were they possessed by weakness and looking for an outlet, a reason to have these experiences and to point the blame elsewhere?
Well, if you'd asked me that question 25 years ago, my response would have been a lot different than it is tonight. But I think you've hit on the head. There's an old saying in the Pentecostal churches that there's a demon behind every bush, or at least people think that that's true. And it's much easier for us, of course, psychologically, to externalize the things that are causing us problems. And within the Pentecostal realm, which I was a big part of, people say, I've got a demon of gluttony, I've got a demon of lust, I've got a demon of pornography, I've got a demon of violence. And really, are they demons? Well, I guess, maybe sort of they could be, but really, if you look at those things, gluttony, violence, lust, pornography, you can see, as you've pointed out, a very clear understanding that it's much easier for people to externalize actions that they themselves are engaged in, and especially if you're in a religious environment that has created such an easy foil, such as the devil. It reminds me of a story. Jesus is walking up to a church, and there's the devil sitting there crying on the front porch, and Jesus says, "What's wrong, Mr. Devil?" He says, "Oh, it's those Christians. They blame me for everything." And that's kind of the way it is, sadly but truly.
that's what I've been curious about. So many people that, we know in the paranormal field over the last 11 years, some people have done some heinous things and then blame it on the paranormal. Some people we know that have been outed for, severe alcoholism, physical abuse, sexual abuse of minors. And immediately it's, I know where this came from. This came from the investigations of this site that's so dark and mysterious. And Tim and I will sit here and shake our heads and think, no, it came from within you. It was always there. We all have the ability to do evil and to have sex with children and drink too much and do horrific things. But the majority of us say, no, that's not the right action to take. So we don't do it. But it seems like it's become an easier aspect to point the finger to the devil and blame, mysterious dark forces around you for the ignorance and stupidity of the actions that we choose to take a lot of times. And I've grown a little weary, and I don't know where Tim stands on this, but I've grown a little weary of the whole, there's a demon in every cupboard kind of situation.
Absolutely. And, it really comes down to, and, I'm fairly new into the whole paranormal alternative media type thing. I've only been around these, in these woods maybe 5 years or so. And I saw the lack of integrity, and I saw the lack of responsibility within the Pentecostal clergy. I didn't expect to see it within the paranormal realm. And there's still a lot of it here, just like there was there. But let me say this. This is something that I experienced and saw on a fluke. We were at the Paradigm Symposium this weekend, had the pleasure of meeting Tim. And I was walking out of the vendor's room, and here's Tim kind of cornered by this guy with, I think he had his tablet or his phone or something, and he's showing Tim. He's like, look, it's right there, it's right there. And he's trying to show Tim this entity that he sees in this picture. And, Tim was very calm, very polite, just saying, well, I just don't see it. And then the guy pulls me over there, and I'm like, yeah, I just don't see it. And it would have been so easy for Tim to just say, oh, yeah, wow, look at that, that's good work, keep going, and just let the guy go on. But Tim was very firm, yet very polite, and said, I just don't see it. And it was, way pixelated. This guy's reading into stuff. And what Tim left this gentleman with, if he'd have just said, oh, yeah, nice work, the guy would have been off continuing his shoddy scholarship, continuing his shoddy investigation, continuing his wishful interpretations. But that guy left that interaction with Tim thinking, you know what, I'll show you. And that guy's going to go out there now and he's going to do better research. He's going to do more insightful and thoughtful interpretation. And that's what we need, is guys that won't just pat somebody in the head and say, oh, nice work, but guys that will act with integrity and guys that will take leadership like Tim did and just say, you know what, buddy, I just don't see it. Because instead of letting that guy walk away, do the same silly stuff, Tim called him to a higher level of integrity. And to be frank with you, that's what's missing in our realm, is people to stand up and say, no more silliness, no more foolishness. We've got to raise our level of integrity. And if I had a hat on, I'd take it off to Tim for how he treated that situation.
Right, yeah, kind of holding people's feet to the fire and making them look at these things through reality. We've run into that quite a few times where we're dealing with people that believe that they're experiencing the paranormal. And, I've talked, Jeff, I can't tell you on how many occasions I was just out in Missouri over the weekend doing an event and talking about ghosts and residual hauntings and different things. And we started talking about the aspect of demons. And, I've always laughed at the idea when people come to me and they go, I think I have a demon. I tell them, well, you can stop right there. You don't have to worry anymore. You don't. And they say, well, what do you mean I don't? And I said, you'll never wonder if you have a demon.
That's so good. And, I'm a scuba diver, and I had an opportunity to go on a dive with great white sharks, both in a cage, outside of a cage. swimming for a week straight with great white sharks anywhere from 10 to 17 feet long. The National Geographic divers told me what to do, how to interpret them, and I could sit here and tell people, how to react and how to prevent a great white shark attack. Totally useless information, because nobody that's listening to us is going to be stupid enough to get in the water with a great white shark. And you have hit the nail on the head, my friend, I believe. Very, 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 very few, 99.99999% of the people out there listening to us will never, ever deal with a true, real demon.
You talked about the very small scope of how many people truly encounter something malevolent and demonic. In the years that you worked, 30 years as an exorcist, do you believe that you ever did face a demon or the devil in that work? I mean, the true theologic version of those creatures, not just man's dark side coming forward.
Right, that's a great question. And, just to be clear, I do believe that there probably are a very, very small, infinitesimally small compared to what people are thinking of some type of malevolent entities, whether they're ET, whether they're interdimensional, whether they're fallen demons, fallen angels, fallen gods, whatever. I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm just saying that we almost never, ever run into them. And in the time, and I'm thinking back over 35 years, and probably over 35 years, there's maybe 3 or 4 or 5 occasions that I was definitely dealing with something that was a malevolent spiritual entity. Now, was it the devil? No, I don't think that I ever faced the devil. Did I face a tulpa? Did I face a thought form? Did we face some type of a demon or a fallen angel, whatever you want to call it? Maybe in 35 years, and talking about probably somewhere around 10,000 exorcisms, 5, 6, 7 might have been what I actually would call demons.
A demonic, a true evil, demonic hell creature, whatever you want to call these things. What is the attraction to possess a human form? If they have this massive ability, it seems like we're kind of a weakness to them. Of what use would it be to take over a flesh vessel like a human?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I've asked myself that very same question. Just to give you an idea, I think they only do it in very extraordinary circumstances. One of the only times I ever saw what I thought was truly a demonic manifestation, I was actually down in Central America with an older the Assemblies of God called a missionary evangelist, and we were preaching in this place, literally hacking in there, under a thatched hut, 50 or 60 people, and skirts, bones to the nose, everything. And towards the end of in fact, it was the last night of our meeting, this guy walked in the back while my buddy was preaching, and I knew right away, he had the big spear, he had a big headdress, had a bone, I don't think it was through his nose, I think it was through his cheek, but anyway, I knew he was the witch doctor. Now, of course, now I would call that a shaman because I'm more understanding. But this guy walked right up in the middle of my buddy's sermon, interrupted it, and said in perfect English, and none of them spoke English, he said, "This God you're talking about has no power. Let me show you power." He laid down on the floor. It was a dirt floor. And he started to levitate. And he got about 2 feet off the ground. I was about ready to, give him my best Pentecostal in the name of Jesus. My buddy kind of elbowed me and caught my eye and said, he shook his head, "No, don't do it." So didn't know what to do, but he's the older guy. Guy got up about 4 feet. I looked at my buddy. He's like, "No." Guy got up about 6 feet in the high in the air, levitating. And I know it sounds crazy. I know it sounds unbelievable. And I probably wouldn't believe if you were telling me the story. But he's 6 feet high. And then my buddy turns to me and says, "Okay, now." And I give him the whole "in the name of Jesus" thing. He falls from 6 feet high, knocks the wind out of himself when he hits the floor. His English is gone. He and all of the 50 or 60 dudes there, dudes and ladies, ended up, what I would call then getting saved. That obviously was, to me, some type of activity that I can't understand. And because it was such a spectacular event and an unusual event, it's only those type of things where I, in 35 years, would say, yes, that was something other than a person's own unbalanced energy coming back to them. That was something other than a person externalizing, some of their own darkness. Because that, man, I don't think I've seen anything before or since quite like that.
Talk to me about that. When you see this man, is there anything spectacular or different about him or his being? I mean, black eyes,
you
forked
crackled
tongue.
on me at the beginning. I didn't hear what you said right at the beginning.
What can you tell me about this man? I mean, was there anything different about him, just at a glance? Did he have black eyes? Did he, was he forked tongue, gills? I mean, anything weird about him that you would have looked at him and thought, wow, there's something weird about this guy, until he started levitating? Or at that point, was he just like every other person?
Well, obviously with, bones through his cheeks and a headdress and a big spear, and, it wasn't a grass skirt, but some type of a native dress. He was very oddly, dressed and looked very odd to you and I with our Western eyes, but he looked like everybody else, in the village there, of course, a lot more ornate because he was, the shaman of the tribe. But no, there was no, and back then I didn't really know. And I wasn't really looking, but as I look back in my mind's eye now, I don't recall any black eyes. I don't recall any gills, no horns, no pointy tail. It was just a dude, and it was a supernatural event, perpetrated or perpetuated or carried out by a normal-looking guy for his station in life and doing a supernatural event. And that's one of those things. Did I ever see anything real that was demonic? That's about as close as anything that I could say that I saw. There had to be another explanation rather than psychological or environmental. Something happened that was seemingly outside the laws of nature on that night.
Was there any other sense at that point? Could you, could you feel some kind of tactile energy when he was levitating? It just seems like that type of energy expending would leave some kind of energetic scar. I don't know how else to put it other than that. There should have been some kind of burst of energy to do something along those lines.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And again, I was a dyed-in-the-wool, red-hot, blood-bought Pentecostal evangelist at that time, so I wasn't terribly discerning of real spirituality. I was just locked into my own religion. But as you actually say those words, I do remember that sweltering hot night, sweating, profusely. But it was I do remember getting goosebumps. I do remember having a wave of cold, whether that was, the cold like we, see on the Supernatural TV show or not. But I do remember goosebumps. I do remember a feeling of cold. But to be frank with you, I was too stupid back then to really take notice of any true spiritual things. I was just trying to load up my religious gun.
Wow, that's amazing to experience something like that. And that was one of the first and only times you ever had anything of that nature. Now, on the other side, Jeff, have you ever encountered something from the angelic realm that could do that type of activity?
Well, I've had one occasion in my life that I'm certain was, an angelic being. I think it was. It was something, again, inexplicable and out of the ordinary. I was in the Air Force for 6 years. We were over in Germany, and I happened to be leading this Bible study that night, and this very distinguished gentleman came in. He was like a staff sergeant in the Army. He attended our Bible study. And at the end, he says, I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have any place to sleep. I'm just going to be sleeping, at the airport tonight because I'm flying out in the morning. And I was married, so I started going to all the guys on base saying, hey, let this guy stay with you, let this guy stay with you. No. So I said, we're not putting you to the airport, come home with me. He came home with us, and in the morning I went and I dropped him off. And, you've heard this kind of a story before, but this one, I know what happened because it happened to me. Great big long, probably 80 yards between where he had to go and from where I dropped him off. He gets out of my car. walks around. I pull out looking in the rearview mirror, and he's gone. And I think of the scripture where Yeshua, most people call him Jesus, I call him Yeshua, said that, be kind to strangers, show hospitality, because you entertain angels unawares. And I just have to think that with everything that happened, it was a longer story. I've omitted a lot of details, but on the dark side, if you will, I've seen that down there in Central America. And on the side of the light, I saw that over in Frankfurt, Germany.
Interesting question from Bob Villa listening in. He says, why isn't there levitating or these wild signs like that happen in Western civilization?
That is a great question, and I don't know that there are not those type of occurrences, but I certainly have never heard of those type of occurrences. So why is it? That's a great question. If Bob knows the answer, I'd certainly be interested in hearing it.
Yeah, it's intriguing to consider that there seems to be in these foreign countries, which in a lot of cases we consider these godless countries, right? A lot of them that don't have our Christianity or our belief systems. They're the ones that seem to be impacted the most and have some of the most, what's the word I'm looking for? I hate the word impressive because that's not where I'm going at, but they have the most impressive aspects of these demonic possession cases and stories. And we just, we hear about the occasional story here in the United States, the one in Indiana a few years ago where the kids were walking up the wall backwards in front of social workers and police officers and, speaking in tongues and acting weird and freaky. That's such a rarity here. But when you hear of these other cultures, it seems like that's part of, it almost just becomes accepted. You hear about things like that going on in Haiti and other cultures. And, you would think that true demonic forces, if they wanted to impress us and break us and make us fear them, they would be exploding here in the Western civilization to really try to get our attention.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I think that there's probably a couple of different ways to think about it. Typically, and I don't want to be stereotypical, and you certainly can't paint with too broad a brush, but when you talk about, places like Haiti and other places within the third world, a lot of those folks don't have many of the distractions we have. I mean, they don't have all these sports leagues. They don't have all those, sports that they can play and their kids are playing. They're not taking, for the most part, piano lessons. They're not really distracted by all of the electronic entertainment outlets that we have, or at least certainly not as much. So I think that leads a lot more towards immersion, into things like religion, whether it be what we would call good religion or bad religion, white religion, dark religion. I'm not a big dualist, but I think that might be part of it. And not to be too controversial, but I think the entities that are real, the entities that are true, again, that small number, I don't think that they're terribly courageous. I don't think that they're terribly bold. And like a lot of people, I think that they probably would tend towards the path of least resistance. So it's much easier, I think, to operate in third world areas of lower education, areas of lesser exposure to information. So being the cowards that they are and the lazy beings that they are, it really seems to me to make sense that they would probably choose to operate in areas where it's easier for them and where it's less work.
Again, the whole idea of this, and I'm fascinated by it, as many people are. That's why movies, books, and TV series like Damien are so popular right now. You look at the idea of hell here on earth and demons walking amongst us. But when you start looking at it logically, it just doesn't seem to make much sense.
And a new Exorcist series coming to one of the major networks here in a couple of days. There's Lucifer, there's Supernatural, there was Constantine, and the list just goes, on and on and on, for supernatural, / demonic or scary type series. And, I know I've already said it, but I'm convinced that a lot of it is, dominant religious paradigm, losing control, trying to stoke up fear to drive people back into the nest. I know that's rather controversial, but that is, my heartfelt opinion as to what most of this is. Because I again, I just don't think that there's that many demons out there, and yet we're being led to believe, and it's certainly being perpetrated, that we're being stalked by this vast horde of demonic entities, and it's an effort to strike up fear. It's an effort to strike up worry, and I think it's an effort to drive people back to what has always been advertised as the people and places that can help protect you from those things that go bump in the night.
Or could it be, what is that? And I know I'm going to butcher the quote. The devil's best trick on us is convincing us that he doesn't exist.
Right.
And we dismiss. We're so easy to kind of say, yeah, this can't be. But then there are and again, I mean, this could be church rhetoric and PR, but why would you, there are churches and rectories that have been filled with demonically possessed nuns. And, these stories exist out there and have been handed through the cultures. You would think that they would protect the religious aspect, because who would admit to the fact that your own nuns and priests could be taken over so easily? That almost makes it seem like the true power of the God is not what we've been led to believe. So the idea of, we need to all go back to church and start praying. Well, listen, maybe church isn't even safe because nuns and priests are dealing with this as well.
It certainly gives you a lot to think about. And the only thing that springs to my mind is, wow, if even nuns and priests can succumb, then how much more should those of us that, don't hold a membership within the clergy, we really better get back to where we're supposed to be and doing what we're supposed to do. But, the bottom line that I've discovered after 35 years in this is that these quote-unquote entities, these quote-unquote demons, devils, whatever you want to call them, that we should not be afraid of them. We don't need to be afraid of them. They only have the power over us that we allow them to have.
Is that why, in some cases, simply evoking the name Jesus Christ has no effect? Because if the person's own belief or fear or kind of conviction that they deserve this is why it will not go away?
Yeah, I think the bottom line on it is the intention of the person involved. And if they have that, you can say a lot of things, but it's what really is in your heart. What energy are you putting out? What type of frequency are you putting out? What type of harmonics are you putting out? And if you're dealing with energetic beings, and we know now from our learning and our knowledge in science that everything is energy. I'm energy, you're energy. The radios or computers that people are listening to this program on are energy. The program itself, the sound that's reaching their ears, is energy. And energy doesn't go away. So what we're really dealing with is energy. And energy is not inherently good. Energy is not inherently evil either. Now, it can be balanced or unbalanced, positive or negative, if you want to look at it that way. But it's really, in the final analysis, energy. And I think if we deal with it on an energetic level, and by energetic means...
Right, we need to go to a break here real quickly. Sorry, Jeff, I thought the point was going to stop. We'll come back. We'll discuss more of this.
We hope you're enjoying this encore presentation of Beyond the Darkness here on Podcast One. Again, it's been a rough weekend here at Chicago Ghost Con. Dave and I have had a couple different ailments, but we're going to try and make it up to you here during the week. And we'll deliver a brand new True Crime Tuesday for you this Tuesday, of course. And we'll have brand new shows coming up next weekend. Again, I had a bit of a car accident over the weekend. Dave has had some ailments as well this weekend here at Chicago Ghost Con. So we're bringing you this encore presentation. Stay right there. Don't you dare move. We'll have the second part of our encore presentation coming up next.
We all love to refresh our snack drawers. But when's the last time you refreshed your sock drawer? If you can't remember, it's probably time for an upgrade. Bombas socks are made with comfortable innovations like arch support and a seamless toe. Oh, did I mention the cushioned footbed? All sock speak for super comfortable. They come in hundreds of colors and styles, making them perfect for men, women, and children. I love these socks. Tim and I talk about them all the time. Winter's here. It's struck in Minnesota. We got a cold spot coming through, but I know I'm not worried about it. The thing that goes cold on me first is my feet and my head. I've got my head taken care of. My feet were my biggest concern. I wear my Bombas socks. They keep me warm in the winter, cool in the summer. It's the technology that they use in creating these socks, and they work. Plus, they're extremely comfortable. I've just bought a new house. It is a block and a half from where I live now, so most of the moving is being done on foot, and my feet don't feel fatigued and tired at the end of the day. They feel comfortable. It's like a gentle, warm hug for your feet, Tim. And who doesn't like a gentle, warm hug on your feet?
Absolutely nobody.
Come here, Tim. Let me rub my feet on your face. Feel how comfortable these socks are. They're warm. Oh, do you feel that? You like that, don't you, buddy?
It is warm, but your foot is awkward on my face. I'm not going to.
Well, here, let me move it over here. How's that? Better? Oh, you like the feel of that. Imagine how good it's going to feel on your feet. Bombas has a new line of merino wool socks that are made from soft, warm, and naturally moisture-wicking merino wool. It's designed with all Bombas classic comfort features. From keeping cool and dry on your morning run to staying comfortable in your office's freezing air conditioning, Bombas socks, they're ready to work as hard as you do. And for every pair of socks you buy, Bombas donates a pair to someone in need. Bombas are what feet daydream about. So buy your Bombas at bombas.com/darkness today and get 20% off your first purchase. That's bombas.com/darkness for 20% off. So when you're out there ghost hunting in the middle of the night, maybe you're in the middle of the woods and you're Bigfooting looking for Sasquatch, Tim. Maybe you want to go out into an open field and look for UFOs. Bombas has the socks for everybody. There is a pair that will fit your feet and your needs. Don't wait. Bombas.com/darkness to save that 20% off right now. Hey, folks, as always, a big thank you for listening to our show. We'd like to ask you a small but very important favor from all of you. It'll only take a few minutes, and if you're one of the first people to do it, Podcast One will make it worth your time. Literally. We need you to complete a short survey because the information you give us can help make things better for the show and you as a listener. Just go to podcastone.com/survey and everything will be right there for you. That's podcastone.com/survey. The first 250 people who complete the survey will get a $10 gift card to Amazon.com. And 2 grand prize winners will be selected at random to get a $100 Amazon gift card. How about that? Free money. It's a win-win. Our shows are supported by advertisers, so filling this out will really help us cater to needs of you as the listener. So please go to podcastone.com/survey. Answer a few questions, and potentially make some money along the way. Thank you for being a very dedicated listener to your friends here at Beyond the Darkness.
Beyond the Darkness.
Welcome back to the Sunday edition of Beyond the Darkness. I'm Tim Dennis, filling in for Dave Schrader. Again, I explained at the beginning of the program, a little bit of personal technical difficulties. Is that how you would put it? This weekend at Chicago Ghost Con. I had my issues with that car accident. Dave's having some illness issues, and so we're doing an encore presentation this weekend of Beyond the Darkness, a special encore presentation. So bear with us. We'll be back live. We're not live. We're on tape. But we'll be back Tuesday with a new True Crime Tuesday. And, of course, we'll have all new episodes coming up next weekend. So enjoy this encore, this hand-picked encore presentation that I've picked out for you. And enjoy your weekend. And we will see you again next weekend. But I hope you'll enjoy this one. This was specially picked out by me for you for this weekend. Here you go. Here's part 2 of your encore presentation.
Welcome back to Darkness Radio. Our guest this evening, Jeffrey Daugherty, is the author of Confessions of an Exorcist. In wrapping up the idea of possession, exorcism, the fact that we can be taken over. Do you believe that people can and will be affected and taken over spiritually by earthbound ghosts and spirits? Or do you think that that's a load of hogwash as well?
I think that objectively and rationally and logically it is a load of hogwash, but for a person to believe that it's happening is certainly possible, and of course when it gets right down to it, it doesn't really matter what is or what isn't. What matters in people's lives is what they think is taking place. So yes, I agree with you, it is hogwash, but are there people out there that think it's happening? Absolutely.
Our guest, Jeffrey Daugherty, is a former 20-year preacher, Bible college graduate, and has over 35 years and 100,000 hours of biblical study under his belt. A spiritual awakening led him to question if Pauline Christianity had co-opted the original message of Jesus and turned it into a fear and guilt-based matrix of control. I'd like to chat with you a little bit about that aspect now. The Antichrist, as I think I'm understanding it, you believe may have been in our midst already and may be the one perpetuating religion as we know it. Can you walk me through this theory and how you came to this after 100,000 hours of biblical study?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And the theory is this, and really the one of the biggest parts is confusion about the term Antichrist. And, we've talked about Hollywood and we've talked about media, and Hollywood and media have been very instrumental in stirring up this idea of this future uber boogeyman, if you will, that is the Antichrist. But if you really get into the text of the New Testament and even the Old Testament, you don't really have the concept of the Antichrist, carrying the definite article, identifying it as one single Antichrist entity. You have the idea of Antichrist, and when you break that down textually, it just means those that are against Christ. And, of course, if we believe that Yeshua or Jesus was the Christ, then it simply becomes those that were against Jesus. And John the Apostle said in his epistles that the Antichrist is already come. There's many Antichrists that are already here with us. And I'm in agreement with Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson said that Paul, or Saul of Tarsus, the man who became known as the Apostle Paul, was the great Coryphaeus, or the leader of the band. He was the first corrupter of the doctrines of Jesus. So basically, what I'm saying is, if folks want to believe in Pauline Christianity, you certainly have the right, but Pauline Christianity is a different religion, a different faith than that which was originally preached by the original Yeshua movement, Jesus and his apostles. And when I was still a minister, I began to see many contradictions between the teachings of Jesus and the teachings of Paul, and became convinced over the years, and frankly, if my integrity had been able to overpower my need to live and eat and have a salary, I would have left the church earlier. But it was all in seeing discrepancies and contradictions between the teachings of Paul and the teachings of Jesus. And if you look at the New Testament, if it were actually listed in its chronological order, which it's not, the books are completely jumbled. If you look at the New Testament, what it really was, in modern parlance, was a Twitter war between the forces of the original Yeshua movement, Jesus and his apostles, and the Apostle Paul, and what was really a new religion that, with the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70, was able to gain the ascendancy, and then being aligned with the Roman government, allowed it to sweep away almost all vestiges of the original Yeshua movement, but thankfully from the Dead Sea Scrolls and people that have given their lives and dedication to understanding the literal rendering of the New Testament, the understanding of what Yeshua actually taught is kind of being revived today, and I'm very thankful of that. At least I don't care what people believe. They have the right to believe whatever they want to believe. I also happen to believe that they have the right to have all the information on which to base
Well, what are you basing on the fact that there's so much discrepancy in the way that Jesus was leading and meant to lead, and how Paul overtook that? What are the major discrepancies?
Well, the biggest one, and really the root of all of them, is within Pauline Christianity, and from the words of Paul himself, you got this concept of original sin, that man is born sinful from his first breath, and unless there is a shedding of blood, there can be no forgiveness of this sin. Man is sinful via original sin and in need of a Savior, and that Savior needs to come through blood sacrifice. Yeshua, on the other hand, taught that we don't have original sin, but that we actually have the spark of divinity within. The kingdom of God is within us, and instead of feeling guilty and feeling fearful of having to do enough and be good enough and hopefully make it to the good place and not the bad place, Yeshua called us to realize that we do have the spark of divinity within, and he laid out what he called the ways, the truth, and the life, which are really the best of all the ways of human spirituality, the best of all the ways of human truth. And when we walk that life, it leads us back to the Father and also gives us an experience of life and abundant life and peace rather than guilt, fear, worry, doubt.
Where do you come down, Jeffrey, on the concept of God? Is God a being, an omnipotent being, or is it an ideal that was created by man that wanted to lead and needed a head, a force to believe in?
Right. That's a great question. That's probably, the question of the ages. For myself, with all the study I've done, with all the, the degree and all the work, I'm convinced that there is a divine being. I'm convinced that there is, whether you want to call it God, the universe, the great architect of the universe, whatever you want to call this divine being, I'm convinced that there is a divine being, that we are made in his, hers, or their image, and that we are not just the results of some primordial stew, but there is a divine being. We are created in his, her, or their image, and I think that should give great hope and comfort and inspiration to each and every one of us. That's my opinion.
And then where do you stand on the fact of, if Jesus was here as this great teacher and sent here to kind of lead and instigate or inspire this belief system, do you believe that he was any more son of God than Dave Schrader, host of Darkness Radio? And I don't mean that in a blasphemous way, but I mean,
I know you don't.
If Jesus believed that we are all of that kind of God consciousness to begin with, and that the kingdom is within all of us, is it maybe that Jesus wasn't so much born of a magical spark in a holy virgin as much as an idea that was given and an idea that was born so that people, again, would have a physical form to listen to and believe in?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of scholars that are far superior to me in their abilities, that are convinced that there was not this one singular presence named Jesus or Yeshua, whatever you want to call him, that walked the earth, but he's rather an amalgamation of ideas and perhaps different people. For my part, I continue to believe and am convinced that there was a man named Yeshua that came to earth, and I believe the Apostle John put it the best way in the first chapter of the book of John, that he was the Word, he was the Elohim that was involved in the creation of the earth. Back in Genesis 1:1, we all can probably quote, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." John showed us in the first verse of the first verse he ever wrote, that he equated Yeshua with what he presented as a group of gods. The Elohim actually means gods, male and female, and that Yeshua was, or Jesus was, one of them, and he manifested himself. He came to earth in a physical form, and I'm convinced that he came to earth to show us the best of all the ways, the best of all the truths, a way of life, and a way to help us ascend or get back to the Father within a single lifetime, which may have been unavailable to us prior to his visitation to the planet. That's my opinion.
All right. There's so much aspect of it. I know we're throwing people for a little bit of a loop, getting more into the theological and God stuff. But when you're talking about exorcism, you're talking about the different belief systems. It's impossible to not talk about this realm and talk about what's going on. Do you find it kind of a strange dichotomy to say that we are so loved and yet we are so fragile and easy to be manipulated by darker forces? It would seem that, we would be better suited. We would be better protected by a full-on, powerful God that wouldn't just leave us open for these type of negative attacks.
And that's a very interesting point of view. I've never really pondered that. And you kind of go back to, why did God or the gods, why were we created, and what is really expected of us? I think that if you get, in the end, if we are created by a God that truly is benevolent, a God that truly is loving, and a God that truly wants us to develop to our full potential, we have to be created with free will. We have to be created with the ability to make mistakes. We have to be created with the ability to do wrong as well as right. And what type of a being could actually love someone if they weren't also given the opportunity, if they chose to respond with hate as well? And I think that in some sense, the divine is more interested in our overall development as a spiritual entity, which this human life may be a rather small part of. The divine is more interested in our long-term spiritual development than maybe necessarily what happens here in this life. And I think we're here to learn, we're here to understand, we're here to make mistakes, and we're here to develop, and we're here to develop some individual responsibility to take charge of our own lives and to step out of indoctrination and pound our way down the way of enlightenment. It's not supposed to be easy. It's not supposed to be handed to us. And I don't think that a God that made it super easy for us would be doing us any good. So I think that there is a divine being, and I think that he's put us here to kind of figure this out a little bit on our own and take some individual responsibility and maybe get knocked down and pick ourselves up and keep on going.
But as a divine being that wants to teach us and wants us to excel to be the best that we can be, the job as a father is, my job is to enlighten my kids, educate my kids, and protect my kids, and be there in a way that they know I'm there, not just a concept of a dad, but that I'm there. And I'm present, and I'm at that track meet in the morning, and I'm at Cub Scouts, and I'm at the baseball games, and they can physically look and see me. Isn't it harder to have this? And I know, that's where it all comes down to faith. It just seems like there should, in this kind of belief system, there should be more of a give and take. If you truly want these people to excel to the greatness that they really are, isn't inspiration part of that? And inspiration being true proof that this exists and that there is more beyond what we are.
Right. I certainly can't argue with that, and it really is a conundrum. And people have been debating and pondering these things for really as long as there's been people. And I guess maybe at the end of the day, and I'm a father too. I have 3 great kids, 4 great grandkids, and at the end of the day, I don't know if the father analogy is the most workable one, because of course we're going to always default to the hardest thing is to kind of step back and let your kids make their own mistakes. And while the divine certainly has an aspect of that to him or her or them, I don't know if the father analogy is the best, because it's probably more of a
that's the one that's
analogy.
Fed to us, right? That's the one that's repeated and fed to us so often.
It is, and in my estimation, that type of an analogy probably breeds more dependence than it does independence and responsibility, personal responsibility.
In the research you do you find yourself facing true moments where you have a crisis of faith in any of this?
I've never really had a crisis of faith. Never. I've always thought that there was. Even when I was a preacher, right? I lived in a house provided by the church. My money was provided by the church. My food was provided by the church. And my wife decided she didn't want to be married anymore. And in my church, that's it. You're done. You get kicked out. And even in that moment, I remember a buddy of mine also got left by his wife at the same time. Small world. And he said to me, if we're going to be miserable, let's be miserable in a good place. So we went to Hawaii together. I got there a little earlier than he did. And I remember sitting there in the condo, surrounded by empty beer bottles, which I shouldn't have been drinking, and cigar stubs, which I shouldn't have been smoking. But I remember being mad at God and crying out. And I remember just saying, like the Bible figure Job, even though you slay me, even though you're tearing me up, I still believe that there is a God. So even in my darkest hour, I've always believed that the divine was there. And Dave, actually, the more I study and the more, I know I've read the Bible probably a couple hundred times cover to cover, but still every single time I read it, even though I think a lot of it is diamond, but a lot of it is also dung, it's added in by men and mistranslations, every time I read it, there's always another nugget. There's always something else that makes me say, wow, I can't believe this. And the more I read, the more I study, the more my faith is increased, the more my faith is strengthened. So even though I'm not a preacher anymore, even though I probably don't even qualify as a Christian anymore, I'm more in love with Jesus/Yeshua and do my best more than ever to walk and live according to the teachings that he gave us.
I know I'm one that faces this question, and a lot of people walk this line with me. When you're having these crises of faith, when you talk to people that are dealing with that, when things just logically don't add up with all that we've been told and all that is, how do you help reel people back in to give them a sense of belief and understanding and faith again?
That's a great question. I guess with me, when you've seen guys floating and you've been interacting with angels, there's not a whole lot that can to shake your belief in the divine. But your question's a good one, and what I invariably find, Dave, is that when people are having a crisis of faith, quote unquote, what they're having really is a crisis in faith in their religion, in their church, in their beliefs, but they really, down at the core, are not having a crisis in faith and belief in God. That's why I have a shaman friend that said that he believes one of the requisite stops from indoctrination to true enlightenment might be atheism, because you allow all of the ism and the anity and the religion to get stripped away from you, all of the ecclesiastical stuff and baggage, and you get right down to the bare tacks. It's not religion, it's not church, it's not, robes or vestments, it's just the divine. So I think a lot of times when people are having a crisis in faith, it's a crisis in faith in religion, not a crisis of faith in the divine. And pointing that out almost invariably brings people around, and it's almost like you can see the clouds part and the sunshine and the angels begin to sing. It really is pretty dramatic when people realize that dichotomy and find themselves on the other side of it.
This is where it gets weird and rough for me. Sometimes I stray away from, talking about the religious aspect too much, because I know there's a large portion of our audience that just gets immediately turned off when you start discussing God and Jesus. And, they want to hear ghost stories and they want to hear about demons and they want to hear these things. But as I said earlier, I think some of this is about that. And on the other side, I also try to keep it, and I know Tim and I walk a thin line of trying not to impose too much of our own thoughts and beliefs. But then it seems whenever we do kick up on that from time to time, we get an overwhelming response from people that are kind of in that same place. And, I kind of feel called right now to chat a little bit more about this with you. As you said, you don't believe that necessarily it's a crisis of faith of of belief. It's a crisis of faith in maybe our leadership. I strayed away from church long ago because I didn't believe in the people that led the church. I didn't believe in their stories. I didn't believe in their conviction. I watched them, praising and handing wafers and wine out in one day and making eyes at a woman in the front row the next, and while they're married, and watch them misdirect people that they don't want to deal with because there's too much to answer. I watched churches overwhelmed after 9/11 with people seeking real spiritual answers, real conviction from their leaders. And instead I saw that it was met at most places with, hey, look, we've got more people than we've ever had. Let's talk about tithing. And so many times it seems the message from the leadership is so missed from what is actually needed that it makes you start to question that if these people are our leaders and they are the ones being enlightened by God, they would have a better idea and a pulse of understanding of what it is that they need to bring to people. And it seems that in most cases their leadership qualities are so far off that it's pushed myself and many people away from the normal, four-walled church aspect of what religion is. I still have a relationship with God and have beliefs, but it's not to say that the more I've learned over these 11 years, that more of it makes less and less sense to me. As we talk about, different aspects of the paranormal with religious leaders that we've had on the show, they'll question and mock and laugh and pawn off and, well, that doesn't exist. But then when I've thrown the question up of, how do we know that this is the answer when Jesus is nothing but a photocopy of 11 to 12 different characters that came before him that had the exact
conservative estimate,
right? That had the exact same storyline, the exact same history, and born of a virgin, went on to rule and came up through rough times, and then their life was eventually ended in order to help others. How is it that out of all of these others that preceded him, that Jesus is the one we decide is the real one? How do we make these declarations? Is it just because he had a better press release? He had a stronger moment in time to make this impression in our history, and that's why it's stuck? Because we do know that at the times, through history, whoever took over certain areas would wipe out the memory of what came before them, and would erase those stories and chisel off the stories on the pyramids or the walls or whatever, or destroy the paintings and the artwork that depicted who the leader was prior to them, and then they would rewrite their own history at those moments. Why do you think Jesus had his stuck? Why that story in particular?
Well, I think it's pretty simple when you look at it from a historical context. Yeshua, the guy that's why I say Yeshua to differentiate him from Jesus, he came preaching and teaching a very different message, and it was the Pauline forces that stepped in and pulled everything back to the pantheon, made this Jesus character just like all those other gods, like you correctly pointed out. And it was a real battle until Jerusalem was destroyed in AD 70, because that was the seat of the Yeshua movement. And with most of the people that believed the new Yeshua message gone, it was back to the pantheon, back to business as usual, and here we are 2,000 years later, still walking in it.
Jeff, talk to me about faith and belief. How are those similar, but also so diametrically opposed, it seems?
Right. And of course, it's all about semantics. I guess it's kind of a potato, but to me, you've got faith, you've got belief. A belief, in my mind, is acceptance, devotion to something that has been given to you, to something that has been served up to you. I remember being in Bible college thinking I was listening to these men that experienced things for themselves, and they're passing on this great legacy of knowledge to me, and I became an assistant to one of the professors and realized that the notes he was preaching from or teaching me from, he'd been teaching from for 20 years, and he got those notes from the guy that taught him, who got those notes from the guy that taught him, from the guy that got those notes that taught him. So belief really is, oftentimes, what the mama bird comes back to the baby birds in the nest and how she feeds them, with what. That's kind of belief. It's accepting what other people are telling us is true. But to me, faith is a very different thing. Faith is a been there, done that kind of thing. Belief is when, in your situation, you're believing in your church and you see those things. Belief is when I was a preacher and my wife runs off with a guy that was playing piano for me that got quote-unquote saved in one of my meetings. That's belief crumbling. But now, through those circumstances and through those situations, it's allowed me to move my focus away from belief in what I've been told, taught, or handed down, to have faith in something that is experiential for me. Belief is hand-me-down. Faith to me is boots on the ground, real world, been there, done that for me, Jeffrey Daugherty.
Do you believe, I know you were saying that, you think things are a little different than we've been led to believe. Josh from Eden Prairie writes in, he says, your guest this evening has several times mentioned the true teachings that Jesus gave us, yet I'm not exactly sure what he's referring to. Does he agree with the teachings as recorded in the four Gospels, the accounts of the New Testament, or does he hold some other position? If so, what is that position?
What your guest believes is that the New Testament is a collection of documents that are grossly out of order, and in my opinion, intentionally so. The New Testament contains the words of God. It contains the words of great men. It contains high teachings, high morality, and it also contains outright mistakes, some number of outright ludicrosities, and outright attempts to put words into the mouth of God. And what your guest believes is that like John said, if all of the things that Jesus said and did were to be written down, all the books of the world could not contain them. And it's my belief that one Bible, even though it be 66 books, it can't possibly contain all the wisdom and teachings and knowledge of the divine or of Jesus. So I believe the Bible does contain some of the words of the divine. I also believe it contains, the way I put it is, it contains a lot of diamonds, it contains a lot of dung. So I'm on a lifelong search for the teachings, the original teachings of Jesus within the Scriptures and in other places and in other books that didn't make the cut by the ecclesiastical authorities of the first century.
Satan, who is this character, and what do you believe of his legend and lore?
You really want me to answer that?
No, we got 15 minutes. Let's just sit here and look at each other. Yeah, Jeffrey, what have you got for us?
Well, to be frank with you, I don't think it really matters too much what Jeffrey Daugherty thinks about Satan or who Satan is. What Jeffrey Daugherty has discovered directly from the text of the New Testament is something very different than most people are used to hearing. If you look into the New Testament and you look at Satan, of course, we've been taught that Satan, it was this being, and whether you think he's got a tail and horns and a pitchfork or not, he's this diabolical, malevolent being. In the New Testament, in the Greek, it's literally rendered, it's just the Satan or the Satan, which is really just the malevolent force within us, or when it's talked about as a personage or given the definite article, it's called the adversary. So if you follow the train of thought from the Satan to the adversary to Lucifer, and you talk about Yeshua or Jesus in Acts chapter 9, talking about seeing or Paul seeing this light from heaven, Jesus uses the same very words for light from heaven when he talks about I saw the Satan or the adversary fall from heaven. So strictly textually speaking, in the New Testament, without my opinion or anybody else's opinion, if you connect the dots, the Satan, the adversary, Lucifer, it's the same being that the Gnostics called Yaldabaoth. It's the same being that the Cyrus cylinders found in Nineveh identify as Marduk. It's the same being that in the Old Testament is called Yahweh. So the being that we're saying, Lucifer, Satan, devil, adversary, is the demiurge or Yaldabaoth or the Lord of the Old Testament. is the being that is Satan, but don't get all crazy saying I said the Lord's the devil. It's just the Lord is the adversary, the Satan, if you will, to Yeshua or Jesus. That's my answer.
I don't think that sounds crazy at all. I thought it was kind of an interesting aspect of the Bible, is talking it over with a few friends about a month and a half ago, when we talked about the idea of the Old Testament talks about God, and God is kind of a jerk, smiting people and eye for an eye, and sacrifice this, give me that, blah blah blah. Then he sends Jesus down. Jesus kind of takes over, and it's suddenly a much more comforting environment. It's a lot less blood and daggers, and it's a lot more kisses and hugs and turning cheeks. And it
is. And if you follow the Lord from the beginning of Genesis all the way through, the Lord, Yahweh, Jehovah, has been from the beginning a being that kills, maims, destroys. There's at least 8 places in the Old Testament where the Lord said, kill the men, kill the women, kill the children, kill the babies, kill the animals, wipe them all out. The Lord has always been a being that has been big on killing people, big on, worship me. He said over and over, I'm a jealous God, and he's a God that is all about bloodshed. And then all of a sudden, yes, he's done that, but God is love. Well, that God isn't love. Yeshua comes on the scene at the beginning of the New Testament and says, look, we've had how many, I'm not going to get into people's theology, but thousands of years of death, carnage, bloodshed. I'm here to say that now you don't have to have bloodshed anymore. Your sins are washed away by water baptism. You don't have original sin. You've got the spark of divinity within. Here's a new way. He goes into the temple on Passover and stops the sacrifice. No more bloodshed. That was part of Yeshua's deal. So you've got the Lord. You've got really 2 gods in the Bible. You've got the Lord, the bloodthirsty, the killing. Yeshua called him the father of lies. Yeshua called him the first murderer. You got that guy. And then you've got Yeshua. And because of what happened again in AD 70 when Jerusalem was destroyed, the vast majority of the teachings of the original Yeshua movement or the original Jesus movement, the ones that said no more bloodshed, no more killing, wash your sins away in baptism, you got the spark of divinity within, that has been held down, pushed down, crushed by the Pauline forces that went right back to the Old Testament God and created this Jesus figure, just like all the other 1,100 people that were born on December 25th in a manger to a virgin, opposed by kings, crucified, raised from the dead, and coming again. It's 2 different schools of thought. Choose which one you want to believe, but I think you've got the right to get all the information to make that choice.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I said there's so many weird aspects of it. And you think, and I think that's where people run into this. That's kind of where my crisis of faith has come, is it's so many things seem so diametrically opposed to one another. This loving, benevolent, all-knowing, omnipresent God, and when one of the angels steps up and goes, hey, if we're all kind of God and we all have this in us, maybe we should, hey, to hell with you, boom, you're out of here. And he casts them down to have dominion over earth. So you've created these beings in your likeness that you want to rule the planet, to have it. And then you're going to take something that you think is your enemy and give it dominion over the earth to mess with the people that you've put here that you love so much. Those are the parts that just make no sense. And you read into these aspects of what God, that he's giving us free will and he's doing this and he's doing that. And the devil's one with temptation, but you're right. Who's really the one giving us temptation? God. Hey.
Dave, I preached this stuff for 20 years until I could no longer, I literally couldn't look myself in the mirror because I knew what I was preaching wasn't true. All of the contradictions, all of the problems, all of the difficulties go away when you stop forcing yourself to adhere to the Pauline party line and just allow yourself to read the text of the New Testament in its literal fashion. And you don't have to be a Bible college scholar to do it. Go to BibleHub.com. I don't get paid to say that. You can read the New Testament from the original Greek into the literal English. With the Internet, you can know everything that a PhD-level seminarian knows. So today, I mean, it used to be people were tricking us. They were doing it to us. Today, man, it's up to you. The only one reason for you not to be enlightened, for you not to know the truth, is because you don't want to turn off who's getting kicked off the island or winning the singing contest or the playoffs long enough to check it out for your own self.
Oh, that's calling it like you see it, Jeff. Don't hold back. But you know, it is. It's an interesting aspect, and you know, I know you'll rankle a lot of feathers tonight, and I'm sure I will too with what we've been discussing. But I think that's kind of the idea, right? Is to not just sit back quiet and complacent, but to learn and push. And if you don't believe the things and you think that what we're saying is lies, then research it yourself. And what do you find? What do you educate yourself to believe? And you know, I don't know that I would go as far as saying that God is the Satan to Jesus, but it just seems like, you know, those are the aspects of where my faith rocks and shakes. I've seen miracles. Tim and I talk about them on the show all the time. We've heard amazing things happen. We've seen amazing things happen. Healing goes out. We've, you know, our show last year when California was in a lot of trouble and people were begging us to put out prayer and healing for California to get rain. They were getting record rainfall at times a year. They never get rain. When you have people around the United States and around the world focusing on that, you know, it got a little messy after a while because there was too much. Same with Colorado a few years ago when it was going bad and they had all these wildfires. Oh, we need rain. Pray for rain. We prayed for rain, and it was washing out cities and villages. So, again, sometimes you got to be careful because you just don't know how much to turn the prayer spigot on, apparently. The sprinkler of love was set to high that night.
Right.
You know, and you have these things happening. So there's obviously something. And that's where I'm intrigued when you say that, you know, maybe the divinity is within all of us. And once we learn to tap that aspect of who we are and what we are capable of doing, that's when we begin to levitate. That's when we begin to change our paradigm and change the reality that we've grown to accept because this is what we're told to believe and understand.
Absolutely. And, you know, I almost say it in a joking manner, but it's really true. If I've caused the listeners tonight to either say, I've got something to think about, or if I've made them uncomfortable, my work here is done. All I'm trying to do is inspire people, whether it's out of anger or whether it's out of earnestness, to get into the text, to get into the history and say, you know what, by Jove, I'm going to figure out if this guy is nuts or if what I believe is true. And if you search it and research it and you believe in your heart that what you're doing is the right way, literally, I mean this with all respect, God bless you. But have the guts to check it out, my friend. That's all I'm asking.
For people that are having this crisis of faith, I don't know that we've given them any sense that there is something greater beyond what we are and what we do here. Where do you believe we go? Is there something that comes after this life? Or do you believe that life is the gift and that we are to make the best of what we have here because there is nothing after what we do here?
Well, I believe, and what I believe is based on, again, the literal teaching in the New Testament and parabiblical research of the message of Yeshua and other places in other books. But I believe that essentially, to put it very crudely, right now we're a spiritual being walking around or driving a meat suit right now. This life is not who we are. This life is just an experience that we're having. So what happens here is instructive. What happens here can be glorious. What happens here can be horrific. But in the end, what you are, what you're looking at in the mirror, what you're touching, tasting, feeling, that's not you. You are a spiritual being that happens to be walking around in a meat suit right now. So yes, take hope, take heart. You're not filled with original sin. You've got the spark of divinity within. You're here to learn, to grow, to discover, and really, if you do it right, to enjoy and have peace and abundance. But this is just a step. This is just a stage. Don't get too wrapped up in it. You are a spiritual being that's going to transcend this life, come what may. So just do what you can. Do what you're led to do. But if you don't do anything else ask questions and question answers. Find your own way in this life. Unindoctrinate yourself. Be your own guru. Guide your own spirit. Master your own ascension.
All right. I can't put it any better than that. I thank you for your time tonight, and we do have links up to your website, jeffreydaugherty.com, to the book Confessions of an Exorcist, where you get a chance to go behind the scenes of a man who had 30 years as an exorcist and challenges us to rethink our ideas about what demons and exorcism are and what our responsibilities are to both people and spirits. So, Jeffrey, thank you again for coming on and sharing some time with us this evening.
It's my privilege, gentlemen, and thank you to your great audience. Look forward to being back with you again.
Thank you. I'm sure we'll be hearing from you again real soon. Well, it's a fascinating conversation, and shaking the paradigm of what we believe and understand, that's how new breakthroughs happen. You know, it's easy to piss a lot of people off and talk about these type of things and do it for the shock value. That wasn't the intention or the idea behind tonight's talk or conversation or my questioning. And, it's okay to have a crisis of faith. I think it's okay to question and want to know and understand more of what we do, why we do, and how we do the things that we do, so that when we do these things, we're not just going through life as a mindless zombie. We're making decisions based on information that we have gleaned and information that makes sense to us. And that's a good thing. So question much, live lots, love lots, laugh as much as you possibly can, and cherish the people around you, because we don't know what comes next. So make the best of the world and the life that we have right now. For Tim Dennis, I'm Dave Schrader, and whether you like it or not, this is the best in paranormal talk radio. You've been listening to Darkness Radio.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Beyond the Darkness, the Encore Presentation. Just in closing, I want to thank you guys, each and every one of you, for everything that you've done for Dave and I here on Beyond the Darkness. I like to always have an attitude of gratitude, and I don't think thank you gets said enough. The please, please, please gets said enough. Please listen to our show. Please download our app. Please follow us on social media, and please subscribe to True Crime Tuesday. You hear that a lot, and you do get that a lot from us. Thank you doesn't get said enough, I don't think. So I do want to thank you. I want to thank you for following us on social media. I want to thank you for downloading the show and listening to us. I want to thank you for all the nice comments on social media, the comments on the podcast page here. I want to thank you for rating us. Thank you for giving us nice ratings. I want to thank you for continuing to support us and coming to see us at conventions like Chicago Ghost Con. And honestly, we wouldn't make efforts to come out and see you guys, and make Herculean efforts to come out and see you guys, or hang in there even when we're not feeling well, and try to deliver you some sort of product every week. If we didn't recognize the efforts that you guys go to support us, we want to go to extreme efforts to give you some sort of product. We love you guys. You guys go above and beyond to take measures to support us. You have busy lives, you have families, you have jobs, you have a lot of things going on in your life. You've got stuff to do. Your time is important, and we recognize that. And the precious time you spend listening to us is greatly appreciated. I had a wonderful time at Chicago Ghost Con, getting to meet the people I met here, and seeing old friends as well that I've seen from year to year. I had a great time talking conspiracy theory with people this weekend in the anatomy of a conspiracy. I hope to get out to more conventions. And yes, the foot's stable. The foot is stable, and I'm looking forward to getting out to more places and seeing folks. And just shooting the shit, if I can say that. Having a few drinks with people and talking some paranormal. That's always fun. For Dave Schrader, I'm Tim Dennis. We will see you on True Crime Tuesday. If you don't know how to subscribe to True Crime Tuesday, you can go to darknessradio.com or just go to your Darkness Radio app. It's free in the Google Play Store and on iTunes or the podcast store. They're on Apple. Go get the app and subscribe to True Crime Tuesday. It's $5 a month. And, come join us on that side. You got Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals, and you've got amazing interviews over there having to do with true crime. And that $5 a month goes to support us over here as well. And again, we thank the people who are supporting us already over there, as you have no idea how grateful we are that you support us over there. We're also grateful for the people who listen every single week and support us over here as well. You guys do amazing stuff over here. Support our advertisers. Again, we don't put anybody on this show that we don't support. The fine advertisers that support us on the show, the people that you hear, advertising and supporting us on this show, do amazing things, and they have amazing products, and we encourage you to support them as well. They keep coming back and supporting us if you support them, so please do that as well. I'll stop rambling now. Part of it's a head injury. Car accidents are no joke, folks. Have a great weekend, everybody. Go Vikes. Go Bears. Don't go Lions and Packers, because we need to get ahead in the division. There you go. Have a great weekend, everybody. For Dave Schrader, I'm Tim Dennis. This has been Beyond the Dark World.